Mike and Jordan from SA Food Tours. And before I get started, let me introduce my wife, Melissa.
Hey, guys.
Oh, thanks for being here as well. This is episode number 3 of Beyond the Riverwalk. So we're going to be talking a little bit about SA Food Tours and what they do, and a little bit more about Mike and Jordan. So why don't we start there, and why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. So my name's Jordan Gonzales, and I grew up in the San Antonio area, lived out in Bernie and San Antonio, went off to college. I'm an Aggie, and moved back to San Antonio, and always have had an entrepreneurial mindset, and realized that when friends came to visit San Antonio, they'd always want to see the Riverwalk, but they always asked for my personal opinions when it came to food. And I just realized that this was a need, and thought that it could be formed into a food tour. And so initially tried to start in 2013, but the downtown area hadn't developed just yet. And then Mike came along, and he'll introduce himself. And then we picked it up earlier in 2016.
Sounds good. So,
yeah. Hey.
Oh, yeah. So Mike, how did you get involved here?
Yeah. So I was actually born and raised in San Diego. Most people ask me why I left San Diego to come to San Antonio. And that's because our company actually got bought out by a company based in New Jersey. And I was given the opportunity to either work in New Jersey or Texas.
Oh,
and just
tough.
looking at looking at weather growing up in San Diego, I don't know that snow is going to be a very good thing for our family. So the Texas dry heat won us, and the cost of living. And so we moved out here December 31st, 2015, so bringing in the new year in a new state. And I actually met Jordan at work, and he came to me with this idea saying, hey, there's this thing that I'm doing, and I'm just looking for someone to come by and help me with this. And I immediately jumped on board. He asked me first, he's like, do you want to run it past your wife first? Because there's like weekend commitments and night commitments and things like that. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll run it past her, but I'm sure she'll be okay. So I went home and asked, and been on since then. So it's just been a lot of fun. And for myself, not being from San Antonio, I got to learn a lot about San Antonio, which is really cool.
Yeah, in a fun way besides. I mean, you're not just doing
exactly.
tours, you're eating your way around town, I guess.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard way to beat.
So you moved here at the end of 15. It's around the same time we got here. And Jordan's been here the whole time. So when did you actually kick this off, and how did you start up the whole service in the first place?
Yeah, so we started in early 2016, and then we first started doing tours, trial tours in the summer of 2016, and then opened up to the public in November of 2016. So that's kind of like our timeline for opening up.
Okay, yeah, that's more recent than I realized.
Yeah.
So the tour that we took the other day was downtown, and I think it was 5 different locations. And I don't want to talk the whole time, so Melissa, you jump in too here.
Oh, I will.
I can always hog the microphone. But it was like 5 different locations. So how did you arrive at what locations you take folks to? And, was there kind of trial and error, or did you, find some new ones since that time? Or is this the 5, I guess the group of 5 that you started with? Yeah,
so just originally, because in 2013, when I tried to start SA Food Tours or Food Tours in San Antonio, actually some of the restaurants that I was looking at are actually on the tour today. But at the same time, there weren't enough restaurants that I considered unique gems or specialized restaurants that we wanted to have on the tour, and we thought would really represent San Antonio in a unique way. And it's interesting because a lot of the restaurants actually have a special meaning to me, and I've had different events there. One of the restaurants was the dinner before I proposed, on the day that I proposed to my fiance. We had dinner there, and then the day after we got engaged, we celebrated with family at one of the restaurants for breakfast. And so those were kind of some of the restaurants, and I'll kind of let Mike talk about some of the other ones and how we found them.
Yeah. For one, we were looking for just a really good dessert place. And we were just having a hard time actually finding a really good dessert in downtown San Antonio. And we just kind of kept Google mapping and kind of looking around and doing really hard research and trying out all these places. And it was tough. I tell you, we had to eat a lot of food. And a lot of it is just kind of exactly. So a lot of it was just kind of walking around and trying food. And one of the places on our food tour, we didn't even know what it was. It was just across the street from our bakery place, our dessert place. And we walked by and had no idea what it was, and just kind of walked in one day and just talked to the owners, and the owners were great, and we just formed a relationship with them. And so a lot of it is just kind of walking around and trying out food and finding things that are different. Like, we love the Riverwalk. We have nothing against the Riverwalk, but kind of like what you're doing, we're trying to go beyond the Riverwalk and show people that there's something different out there than just the Alamo and just the Riverwalk. But there's some delicious food out here in San Antonio.
Oh yeah, we everything we tried on that tour was fantastic. Good.
That's the whole goal.
We will have to say our legs felt like it was more than 1.5 miles.
I think she's been
because we're feeding you the whole time.
Yeah, the website said 1.5 miles, so I think she's been waiting to ask you that.
We both commented that felt like us walking around Epcot a couple of times. So
it might have been all the calories we were carrying around with us, though, that made it a little bit harder.
True.
Yeah. But of the 5, the only place that we had been before was Luke. Yes. The rest of them, I can say we probably hadn't even heard of before. So y'all opened our eyes to a lot of things, that's for sure.
And that's something we noticed when we were doing the family and friends like trial tours, was that a lot of people hadn't been to these restaurants in downtown. Because we kind of get stuck in a rut of going to the same places. We know what we like, and we continue to go there. And so it's been kind of cool to introduce food to even locals here in San Antonio.
Well, I definitely want to go back to Zinc because I only had like 2 tastes of the guacamole, and that was it. I was enjoying the margarita way too much.
There you go.
But yeah, we need to go back there and try that place.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, kind of what you were talking about, Kevin, as well. We actually had someone who just went on the tour this past weekend, and they've been living in downtown for 8 months. And we took them out of the 5 restaurants, 3 they had never been to. So it's hard to believe that someone living downtown for 8 months who says they eat out most days of the week, and we still showed them 3 new restaurants. So I was really surprised to hear that.
Yeah, that's a lot. And one of the questions, I guess, that I had about the choices that you had was it seemed like it was a progression. And maybe this is obvious to some people, but it dawned on me it was sort of like a progression of an actual meal. So you start out with kind of an appetizer, you move to your entree, and you end up with a dessert and like a cheese plate and stuff like that, wine options. So was that the intent here?
Yeah, so originally we actually had it designed even differently than we have it now. Where we ended off at Zinc, we were actually planning on ending off at either Nectar or La Boulangerie, the bakery. But we had some restaurants pull out about 1.5 months, 2 months before we were going to go live, and had to kind of reconfigure. And so it kind of works out that the plan is still somewhat in that same range where we start off at Ocho with that slider and kind of move through it all. And just Zinc kind of ends it nicely because it's just a little taste at the end because everyone's usually pretty full.
Yeah,
exactly.
So from start to finish, I guess, how many tours have y'all done? Do you do a couple of them every weekend? And I look sometimes on Fridays maybe? What's your schedule like usually?
Yeah, so we do tours for sure every Saturday and Sunday. We are starting to add Friday in there as well. And then we also do special events as well. So we have, for example, we have a big group coming in from the Midwest, and we're doing multiple tours on one day for them. But usually it's just Saturday and Sunday, and we're also including Friday as a recent.
So there's 2 of y'all right now that we're talking to, but we met a couple of other folks that I guess will be working with y'all. So it looks like it's been accepted really well. The people have been really enjoying it, whether they're visitors or locals like us, I guess. But how has the business grown over time? How have you seen the reception, I guess, come to what you're doing, and how have you gotten the word out so far?
Yeah, it's been really cool to see it progress. When we first started the scene, we didn't really know what to expect. And since going live to the public, we've done 350 to 400 people have come through the tour.
Wow.
So it's been really cool to see all these people coming and eating food and just really wanting to trust their afternoon and their vacations and their Christmas plans and their birthday plans and all these really cool things. If people it's hard to turn down good food and walking around the town.
Exactly.
For me, not being from San Antonio, I wish this was around when I first got here, because I kept getting all these recommendations for all these restaurants, but it kind of adds up after a while if you go to everybody's recommendations.
Right.
Whereas this, you can kind of go check out 5 different restaurants real quick in an afternoon and learn about where you are. So it's been received really well, and it's been really cool to see.
So the folks that we met, are they joining you? Are you basically expanding what you're doing to more groups? Are you doing new routes, or what are your plans, I guess, for the immediate future?
When you say folks that joined us, are
the
you
2 girls?
Yeah, y'all had a couple of folks that were part of our
yes,
group, I think,
yes.
that were in training.
Yeah, so Mike and I, we're kind of heading up the company, but we do have several other guides as well. So right now, including us, we have 5 individuals that are giving tours, but we are definitely expanding. And if anybody hears this and is interested in being a guide, reach out to us.
info@safoodtours.com.
There you go. Bring your own fork, I guess. Huh?
There you go. Right?
So in terms of expansion, so you've got more folks that are going to be involved, I guess, so y'all don't have to work constantly on the weekends. But it is also, from what we talked a while back, y'all are looking to actually expand some routes or to maybe add some tours on top of what you're doing here, or are you changing the current route and restaurants in the future?
Yeah, so we are adding another tour, and we're actually currently working on that and trying to finalize up everything. We will keep the tour that y'all went on, Downtown Delicacy, but we will be adding a new tour. So, I like to explain it as if you went to a theme park and there's different rides to go on. We'll always have the Downtown Delicacy tour, but we're adding another one to a list of options for people interested in going on food tours.
Okay. So the easiest place to find out info when it is published is out there on your social media, I'm assuming, as well as on the website itself, right? So safoodtours.com?
Sure. Yes. That's where you can find out all the breaking news.
Well, we're out there looking, that's for sure, because we're going to be bringing some folks back when we get an opportunity. I know my parents would love it, especially the types of places we went. I think they would enjoy. And when we get some other family in town, if we can ever get my brother over here, he's working constantly, but if we can get him and his family, they would really enjoy it too. They're in the seasoning and blending industry in New Orleans, so they do a lot of food prep and stuff like that for restaurants and for some private labels chefs. So I think you'd really get a great kick out of seeing, what's different here in San Antonio and how the food is, I guess, is sort of a mix of a lot of different cultures.
It's eclectic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Very eclectic.
That was kind of leading to one of my questions, and it's like, what have y'all seen? I guess you might coming from a different place in the country. And Jordan, when y'all were looking at what to include here, what was your focus other than maybe some place that was interesting or that kind of thing? How did you decide which places, or how do you decide which places represent the city well?
Yeah, and coming from San Diego, I knew nothing about Texas. I thought it was all Tex-Mex and just barbecue, and that's about all I knew about. So when I first got here and kind of was talking to Jordan about this food tour, and he started showing me that there's other types of food here, like Luke, being that New Orleans type food, that French Louisiana like deliciousness. It just kind of started to expand my mind about what kind of food is here. I know on your other podcast you were talking about breakfast tacos. Right. I didn't realize how big of a thing breakfast tacos would be out here. So there's all kinds of different foods, and I know. And Jordan has grown up and known these restaurants as well, so I'll let him kind of speak about why some of those are on there as well.
Yeah, the whole theme and direction of SA Food Tours is obviously to introduce people to great food and a great time, but also what we don't advertise as much is what else you get with the tour, getting to meet the chefs, getting to meet potentially the owners or even maybe the manager of the restaurant. And that was the hope, is to have this connection with the restaurant, have this relationship, so that individuals get to kind of get behind the scenes, so to speak, interactions with owners and chefs, and that was a big push. So we didn't want any chains. We wanted something either unique to San Antonio or a startup or a small restaurant that the owners were actively involved in, and that's kind of what we've presented to the public.
And that's the kind of stuff that Kevin and I love.
Yeah, years ago we did a food blog in a different state, and our focus was on local, mom and pop kind of restaurants. And there was so much enthusiasm when someone would find one. When you'd find some place that you thought nobody else knew about, you wanted to take everybody there. And I think that's kind of the enthusiasm that that y'all create in what you're doing, and not only just to come to that restaurant or that place for dessert or something, but to bring people back to San Antonio. And if you live here and you just don't go downtown that often, it does make you want to go back to downtown, because on the walking tour, y'all tell a lot about what's going on with the history of the city, point out a lot of things that from street level that you wouldn't see in a car driving by. So I think there's so much more value, beyond the food, to what y'all do, that I would definitely suggest that people check it out. If you're a newcomer to the city, or even if you've lived here for a long time. Oh,
I can't tell you how many people I've told, but I've come into contact with. What did you do over the weekend? Well, guess what we did? And I told them it's awesome. And they go, well, I've never heard of it. Well, I said, contact them and go take the tour.
There you go.
Yeah,
we like it. We won't complain about that one bit.
We've had a couple of really big weekends recently for several reasons. But the weekend that we spent that day with y'all, and then whatever, I can't think of what we did the next day. But we've had some really good weekends. And y'all definitely were a highlight of, our last. Oh,
the next day after the tour, we rested.
Was it rest day?
Yeah,
okay, that was a highlight too.
Sunday was a rest day because these old hips of mine were aching.
Well, you see, I guess I was still. It was a good ache.
Good. That's the goal.
That's
the goal
right.
is to make sure you guys eat and make sure you got a workout in.
That's right.
Well, here's a question for you, I guess. Who are you seeing as your typical customers in terms of age bracket?
Yeah, we've kind of gotten a mix of everything, which has been pretty cool. I know on my tour on last Friday, I had an 80-year-old woman that came. So that was pretty cool that she was out and venturing and wanted to try some food in downtown. And we haven't seen like a steady stream. We've gotten a lot of locals. We've gotten a lot of out-of-towners. Our first ticket we ever sold when we went live was from someone from Florida. So we've just kind of gotten everybody, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah, I would to add to that too. I would say that although we have seen people in their 20s and early 30s, I would say that most of the people coming on the tour are probably older than their mid 30s. You're not really seeing a lot of 19 and 20-year-olds spending $50 for their weekend to go try food.
Yeah, well, could be true. Maybe you need to do the nighttime bar hop or something like that.
There you go.
I know I'm a little past that one, but that could be a whole new a weekend expansion option down the road for you.
Yeah.
Have to rent a little bus, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, no, I couldn't bar hop.
Oh, well.
That French 75 at Loot did me in.
Yeah, I can't remember. What was the name of that drink?
French 75. And what was funny was later in the week, a high school friend of mine who, of course, I'm from outside New Orleans, she says she had a picture of it. And before I read that, said, oh, she's at Luke having a French 75. And everybody's going, what's in it? I went, a lot of liquor.
Yeah, I enjoyed the shrimp and grits. I don't think I tried the
no, you didn't try the French. Yeah, you didn't. It was good, but I'm just not a hard liquor drinker.
Yeah. Well, we had a good cross-section of people, I think, that were there with us because we had some of the younger folks that were there. We had several couples that were from out of state. And then
3 of them were from out of state.
Were they? 3 couples?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then we're from here. So it's definitely an opportunity to meet some people as well and to get a fresh perspective on the city, if you've lived here for a little while. Because even if you've only here for a short time, you kind of take some things for granted. The culture here we talked about on a recent episode with Judge Wise about, the people that moved to the city from back in the 1700s to now have made this such a different place because it's got just as much German influence, at least years ago, as it does, original New Spanish influence, and then the Americans that came over. So it's a unique kind of culture. And I mentioned in that episode that it reminds me a lot of New Orleans, and the focus on the food definitely brings it back home to us as well, having grown up there. So what would you recommend to people if they're thinking about doing this? How far in advance do they need to find out, what's available? Where do they find tickets? That kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I would recommend them going to safoodtours.com, and it's pretty simple process to book from there. We've been blessed to been selling out, and so I would book a week to 2 weeks in advance. For example, we're sold out this Saturday.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a blessing, and so I would book a week to 2 in advance, and follow us on social media as well, just because it's most likely that the new information on the new tour will be there as well.
Can you give us any hints about the new tour?
Yes, it will be in a part of town a little bit south of downtown.
Well, that's a little hint, I guess. That classifies.
There you go. We got a lot of good food on that tour.
Well, the one thing we didn't mention, I guess, earlier on was the size of the tour group, right? And so the tour groups are relatively small, so you have a great time for interaction. Was that by design as well, or how did that end up that way?
Yeah, and that was by design because there's something more connecting when you have a smaller group together. You can get to know each other a lot easier. Even when the chefs come out, it makes it easier on them as well at all the different restaurants because instead of speaking to this large group, they can come and sit down or talk, or stand, walk around, kind of meet people, shake their hands. It just makes it a lot easier to feel very connected as a group. Usually by the second restaurant, everybody is friend. And then when we get to Nectar, when we're doing the charcuterie boards, everyone's just grabbing food because everybody knows each other by that point. So it really helps people to kind of feel friendly and just enjoy themselves.
Yeah, and our group was about 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 10.
So something like that. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons that the tours will sell out, and I would definitely recommend you book early enough. But I think the value is there as well. You talked about it, being $50 a person. The value is definitely there to me because we learned a lot about the town, about downtown itself, a lot about the historic buildings there. We got some great stories that y'all shared with us. And again, the food is out there. So, and I think the total time was about 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah, it's 1 to 4.
Okay, yeah.
Try to end it by 4. We start kind of walking back.
So when you think about everything you get out of that, that's a really good deal, at least in my perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that it's something that I told a coworker about, and hopefully they're going to be planning to get down there as well. And they've never done it, and he's pretty much grown up here. So I think his wife's from Virginia, so they're definitely interested in doing that.
And that's great. And then there's also something Jordan and I also wanted to extend to your listeners of the podcast itself. We wanted to give you guys all a 10% discount on booking with us in the future by using one of our discount codes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
And the discount code, so we can see the return of people listening and all that cool stuff, is beyond underscore is beyond underscore 10, and it'll get you 10% off when you book with us.
That's perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure that we push that out there to people because it's
awesome.
That makes it just even a little bit better, but it's definitely worth the value. I would recommend it to
we won't share the code. They got to listen to the podcast first.
There you go.
Definitely so. We'll just put a little hint that you got to stay tuned toward the end of the episode. You'll get something.
There's a hint somewhere in the podcast, so they have to listen to the whole
thing. It's buried in there. You got to find it.
It's buried. It's a mystery.
Oh, it's my devious wife here.
I'm not devious. We're trying to help them and help us.
Right. Oh well. Well, we've had a good response to the show as well. We've had some folks listening from all over the place, and like you said, hopefully, blessing wise, it'll grow because we know that by reaching out and reaching more people. One, you're at least from our perspective, your lives get to be a little richer because you meet great folks like y'all. You have great experiences together, and you kind of move on and take that with you, or you continue to build on those relationships over time. So we really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight and recording this, and for all the efforts that you put into making the tours in the first place, because it's a memory that we've got now that we want to share with other people. You have any thoughts, Melissa?
Oh, I agree with everything he said, but I just want to remind Michael, hey, when you get to Zinc again, tell him that the avocados in Louisiana are called alligator pears.
That's right.
I remember that one, yeah.
That's a little tip.
That was a cool... I don't know if I told you that one, Jordan. They the alligator pears because they have the same texture as an alligator skin for avocado.
That's great. That's great.
I'd never heard that before. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, there's
not a whole lot of guacamole in New Orleans, but
no, there isn't.
Fair enough.
There's some other stuff that I know I learned from my grandmother. My grandmother is Italian, and her family came from Sicily.
Yeah, Sicilian.
Yeah, Sicilian before Italian, I guess, is the way it normally works, right? So they had a lot of old stories, and we were going. This is another little side note. When we were going to Zinc at the end, and you were saying it kind of had that, that. I guess Louisiana kind of stuff. The theme, it had the big, the decor is kind of like that. The bar is beautiful. I mean,
the blue dog picture hanging on the wall.
Yeah, the blue dog and the print out there. Well, the one thing I thought about was my grandmother, because she grew up in New Orleans, even though her family was from Italy. And she would call a sink that you wash your hands in a zinc.
Well, actually, it was rinse. It was rinse your hands in the zinc.
Yeah, instead of rinse, it was wrench. So you rinse your hands in the zinc. So if you go to New Orleans these days, there's still some people that pronounce things that way.
Gentilly area.
So when it said zinc, it's like, is this kind of an homage to the way people say it, years ago? So
that's funny.
It wasn't quite, but it still was not a disappointment.
But didn't you tell us that owner of Zinc owned another restaurant?
Yeah, he owns another restaurant called Boudreaux's.
That's what I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah, which is more down on the Riverwalk.
Okay, yeah, we hadn't been to that one yet, but we've heard some good stuff about that too.
No.
Awesome.
Well, this is not something that's related directly to the tour, but you guys know food probably better than most people that we've met in the year or so, the year or more that we've lived here. Any restaurants that are maybe in different parts of the city that you guys like to go to that you can give our listeners some tips on?
Sure. One of my favorite restaurants, just for the environment, atmosphere, and food, is La Fonda on Main. Really, really loved that restaurant. If you're looking for a hole in the wall Mexican food restaurant, Data Point Taqueria on Data Point and Medical. Uh-huh. Those are a couple that are some of our favorites.
I know for me, my favorite Tex-Mex place is a local place called Chipotle, I think is how they. Just kidding. I really like a place called The Luxury. It's just a really cool vibe. It's kind of like a truck, a food truck kind of vibe. It's a really cool place.
Oh, really? Cool. Okay, where's that located?
Yeah. It's downtown.
Oh, it is.
It's a little. It's owned by a local guy. As well. It's just a really cool, they got like big screen TVs and they got swinging chairs kind of down by the river. It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to try to get out and explore some different parts of town. So the South, I don't know, we call it Southtown, I guess.
Southtown.
Yeah, if you guys are doing the tour down in that area, we'll definitely be seeing y'all again in person at some point soon.
There you go. We'll get you guys out.
That sounds like a plan. Well, we appreciate, again, all the time you spent in developing the tours and spending time talking with us tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and we definitely will stay in touch with y'all. If there's anything we can do for you, just don't hesitate to give us a holler.
Thank you so much.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So thank you for joining us as well. Mike and Jordan from SA Food Tours have been with us. They're going to be available to you on social media, and you can also reach them at info@safoodtours.com. So reach out to them about their tours, book this tours, and don't forget there is a discount code you can use, Beyond_10, for 10% off your tickets, just for you for being a listener to the show. So until next time, we will see you around San Antonio beyond the Riverwalk.